I decided that since everybody's stuck at home and it's not allowed to leave, I'm gonna go a little stir crazy. So I thought, since I cook every day and I always put my pictures of my food online before and after, that maybe people would appreciate a video of how I make all my good food and how I got known to be so chubby. So tonight I decided to make a butt pork roast for dinner. I'm going to do it the way my grandma always made it. It's one of my sister's favorite meals. She likes to cook it differently than I do, but I figure grandma's way is always the best to go. So I'm going to show you guys how my grandma showed me how to do it, and it's really easy. I'm going to start off by showing you what I have and what the ingredients are. So here I have my pork butt roast. I bought this at Lawry's. I bought a 20-pound roast that I cut into 5 pieces because who's gonna eat 20 pounds of meat? So it gives us 5 dinners out of it, and I have enough here for company. So this is my pork butt roast. It's really good to have this fatty layer on top. Do not cut it off. That's where all the flavor comes from when it cooks and soaks into the meat. Fat is where the flavor's at in the meat. You're gonna need flour. I got garlic powder, a little bit of ground cumin. Lawry's seasoning salt is the only seasoning salt anybody should ever use. And I got some fine ground black pepper, some oil for your pan, and then on this plate, it's hard to see because it's bright, but I've got some flour on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add spices to my flour and mix it up. Now, I don't measure anything, I never do. I just kind of go by how good it looks. So if you want your meat to brown and have a little color to it when it's done cooking, you're gonna need, the spices will help with the color. So the flour shouldn't be white when you put it on your meat. So I am going to pause this and go ahead and add the spices to the flour, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I figured it'd probably be easier for you to watch me add the spices so you know how much to add. So this is how much seasoning salt I added. See? It looks like a whole lot, but you don't use all the flour mixture, and you really want it to be in the whole flour mixture. So it's better to have, when it comes to food, too much than not enough. We're gonna do garlic powder next. Don't do this at home when you're cooking by yourself. I only have one hand. We're gonna add some garlic. I love garlic. Some people don't. My dad doesn't care for garlic that much, but he never complains about my cooking either, so maybe he likes it more than he thinks he does. And then this cumin, I like to add this to anything I fry. It really gives the breading a kick of some good flavor, but it is really strong flavoring. So I just put a little bit of sprinkles on here in this one, not too much. And I do not put salt if I use seasoning salt. My sister likes a lot of salt in her food. A lot of people like a lot of salt and like their things salty. I do not. Plus my cholesterol and stuff's already high, and so we don't need that much salt in our food. I added pepper. As you can see, this is what it looks like when it's on top. You're gonna take a fork, and I kind of just mix it up like this. See, now it doesn't look so bad. Doesn't look like we have that many seasonings there. And we're gonna mix it up and stir it good, just like that. And we wanna leave it flat around we don't want it in a pile. We want it kind of scattered across the plate. So when we put our meat on it, our meat's touching all flour, no plate. You hear my oven beeping. I preheated it to 350. You can cook this roast on the stove. You can cook it in the oven. I have stuff to do. I can't just stand here in the kitchen, so I'm cooking mine in the oven. It's safer that way to leave it in the oven. It will take 3 to 4 hours in the oven, same as on top of the stove, maybe a little quicker on the stove. Normally I use a tall Dutch oven, cast iron Dutch oven, to cook my roast in, but I pulled mine out. I haven't used it in forever because I started back to work and I don't have all day to cook. So if I'm working and I cook a roast, it goes in the crock pot. But today we're gonna do it in the oven in my cast iron. But my cast iron was a little rusty. I need to re-season it. So we're gonna use a cast iron frying pan that I have my oil in now. And cast iron's great. You can do it on top of the stove, you can do it in the oven. So even though it's shallow, I'm gonna be able to cook my roast on the stove to brown it and then stick it in the oven right in that pan. And it's gonna work lovely. All right, I couldn't figure this out on how to get my phone to where you can see down low because it keeps falling over, and I don't have any help right now holding my phone, so I'm just gonna try to do this with one hand. So you're gonna just pick up this roast like this. It feels gonna feel like a like a baby or something. And don't be afraid to touch your meat. You can wash your hands afterwards. And I set it in the flour. Then I just pick it up, set it in the flour, and then when it's set up like this, you want to brown all sides. So you're gonna flour all the sides, and I'm gonna rub this flour mixture with the seasonings all over. Now, one thing I don't have prepped that I'm not able to do today is sometimes what my grandma liked to do, and what I like to do sometimes with my roast, is if you have fresh garlic cloves or like jarred garlic cloves, you can poke holes with a sharp paring knife into your roast and stuff that garlic clove right in there. Helps it taste really good, garlicky afterwards, but I don't have any fresh garlic, so we're just gonna do the seasonings. Now, you're gonna rub this real good, and cooking's messy. If you're gonna be a good cook, you're gonna make a mess. That's just how it is. If you got kids, make them help you clean it up. But cooking's messy, but it's so worth it. You're gonna spend sometimes hours, it feels like, preparing a meal that when everybody sits down, hopefully if it's really good, it's gone in 10 minutes and you're less like, between cooking and cleaning, a good 2 hours sometimes, just for someone to enjoy something for 10 minutes, but I hardly ever have complaints at my dinner table, so I do it. All right, now look at our roast. It's nice and floured all over. The next thing we're gonna do is fry our meat. Okay, so I choose to use canola oil. It's kind of in between corn oil and vegetable oil. Corn oil is really probably the healthiest oil for you to use to fry in. It's what my grandma always used. It's more expensive than canola oil or vegetable oil. It's probably double the price. I mean, really, the healthiest would be olive oil, but it has a taste that I don't like to use for frying. I saute vegetables and stuff in olive oil sometimes, but I usually don't like to use it for like frying. So I choose canola oil. You have my cast iron skillet right here. I put maybe, see, it's not hot yet, like, you know, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan a little bit, not too much. And I'm going to turn my oven on to high and let that heat up a little bit before I put my meat in it. You want your oil hot before you stick your meat in it, because if you stick your meat in oil that's not hot, it's just going to soak up into all that flour and stuff you just battered your meat with, and it makes it hard to fry. It gets more soggy instead of crispy. We want crispy stuff, so we're going to wait for that to heat up. Okay, folks, our oil's hot. Now, oil doesn't bubble when it's hot if there's nothing in the pan. Like, it doesn't boil like water does. So if you're wondering how you can tell if your oil's hot because you don't want to touch it, you take a wooden spoon handle and you stick it in the oil. Now, I'm going to get kind of close. Hopefully it's in the frame. Let's see, like that. And around the bottom of the stem, see how it foams and it bubbles? When you get those bubbles, that's how you know that your oil's hot enough. Now, my oil's super hot. I put it on high to speed up the process. I'm going to turn it down just a tad bit before I stick my meat in there because I don't want it to splatter. So I've got one hand, and I'm going to cook my meat side, like the side of the meat that has the fat on it. I'm going to cook that side down first. See? It's sizzling. And this roast is so big it barely fits in my pan. Pick it up. There we go. And look at that, y'all. And this process right here is called browning. We're just browning our meat. We aren't going to fry the whole roast, obviously. We are just browning our meat. Watch it sizzle. And your house is going to smell so good during this process because all the smells from all those spices are going to come alive in your house. It smells so good. So we're going to let that cook for a couple minutes, and you're just going to flip each side of the roast and brown each side of the roast until it's of your liking. I like my stuff a little darker that I brown, so I'm going to let it cook for a minute. I like to do the fatty side first because it helps put all those fatty flavors too into your oil when you're browning each side. So I'm gonna let that brown for a little bit, and then I will film again after I'm done flipping it to show you what the finished product looks like, and then tell you the next step to do from there. Now, I know this looks super crazy, but you want to brown every side of the roast. And look at the sides that I've already browned. Look at that. Looks edible already. Go down to the other side. Looking good. Smells so good. It really smells so good. Okay, folks, so I got my roast completely browned to the way I like it. Try to get that in there. Okay, yeah. Still sizzling a little bit. Now, my oven's preheated to 350. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to stick the roast into the oven. Like I said before, I usually like to use a deeper pan. You can add the vegetables that you want with your roast, like carrots or potatoes, onions, whatever you want. You can add that to your roast right in the pan if you have a deep Dutch oven. Like I said, mine's not good right now, so I just have the shallow pan, so I'm not going to put vegetables in with it. If you do put vegetables in with your roast, you want to add maybe like this much water to your pan, so the steam and everything will help cook the vegetables. I'm not going to add any water to my meat because I think it cooks better without the water. It gets kind of like a boiled texture when you put water in your roast. Your meat will automatically create grease from the fat as it cooks. So you should never have to worry about it burning unless you really overcook it. And then I still have about this much oil in the bottom of my pan. So I'm going to stick it in the oven and cook it for about 3 to 4 hours. I'm going to check it about every hour to make sure it's cooking evenly. Sometimes you can pull it out and you'll have to flip it and then stick it back in. This is actually my first time going to cook a roast in just a shallow pan like this, but we're going to see how it goes. I could continue to cook it on the stove top like this, but like I said, I don't want to have to watch it, so it's going to go into the oven. And when I pull it out of the oven, I will come back and show you guys how I make homemade gravy when the roast is all done, and let you guys see the finished product of what it looks like all done. So this is what it looks like so far, and then we're going to stick it in the oven. And my house smells delicious, and yours will too if you decide to try to cook this meal. Okay, so here is the finished product. My roast is done. It took about 4 hours. I left it in the oven. You can see down in there where it's just pulled away from the bone. Another sign that it's done. I did flip it in the middle of cooking it. That's why the skin right here is missing. It kind of stuck to the other side. But you can see that there's a lot of grease and oil in the pan. I did not put any water in the pan. That's just what was in there while it cooked. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull the roast out of the pan. I'm going to put it on a platter, get it ready to cut up, and then I will make gravy with the grease that's left in the pan. I know it sounds really, really gross and like it's going to give you a heart attack, and maybe after 50 years it will, but it's really, really good. Okay people, so my roast is out of my pan, and here is my pan. You can see I drained a lot of the grease out. I'll show you that in a minute. To where the bottom of the pan is just coated. It's coated with grease and some of the brown stuff and seasonings and stuff from the roast and flavorings from the roast. So right here you can see where I drained a lot of the grease that was in the pan out and picked out some of the big chunky greasy marks. So we're gonna let that heat up, and then we're also gonna add a little bit of water to it since I didn't cook the roast in any water. I'm just gonna add a little bit. I added maybe half a cup to my pan. And then we're gonna turn that on high. Turn that on high and let it cook. And get really hot. You want the water really hot for gravy. Now to start your base for your gravy, in a bowl, I put some water, maybe half a cup of water. You want to make sure that your water is ice cold because you're gonna take a little bit of flour. You can use cornstarch or flour. I think flour is easier to use. Cornstarch gets funky tasting for me, but so you're gonna pour that in the water and then stir it up. If you don't use ice cold water, your flour will clump up and you'll just have a bunch of floury clumps. So if you use cold water, ice cold water, and you stir it really good, you'll have just dissolved flour. Now that we did that, you're gonna wait for your water and your grease in your frying pan to heat up and get really hot. See it starting to steam, it's starting to bubble. Once you see it starting to bubble, that's when you're gonna wanna add your stuff. So we're gonna add our thickener. I have this fancy little stir thing from Pampered Chef. I really like it because when you're making gravies, it really gets the bottom of the pan really good. So our pan is sizzling. We're gonna pour this in here. Now, since I'm just guessing on measurements and stuff, sometimes this just doesn't get thick enough and I have to do a tad bit of more cold water with flour, but as I'm stirring it, you can see it starting to thicken a little bit, and as it cooks, it'll thicken it. See it thicken? That flour. And that's basically all there is to gravy. It's getting nice and thick as it's cooking. I am going to add some salt and pepper to taste. See it getting nice and thick. Sometimes you can cook some onions if you want to first in the pan, or some mushrooms. Saute those onions and mushrooms in that grease, and then add your thickener and have that in the gravy. That is really good when you're doing a beef roast. And now it's bubbling. You can see how thick it is by the bubble. I'm going to turn the heat off and remove it from the heat. And that is how we make our gravy. And in just a minute, I will make a plate and show you what it looks like all put together in your plate. For sides, I just made some steamable corn in the fridge because it's super easy. And I can't peel potatoes. The skin on the potato makes my hands break out really bad and hurt, so they hurt. So we do a lot of instant potatoes in this house, or Bob Evans potatoes, because they're delicious. Like, I can't make homemade potatoes better than Bob Evans potatoes, but I have been buying, I threw the wrapper away already. It's the Idaho packets of instant potatoes, and there's a white cheddar one that is just the bomb. My family loves it. So I made 2 packs of that. I work so hard on the roast, I ain't working hard on every dish. So, and it's just as good. And they'll like the gravy on that, and the gravy on their meat. And then I'll show you my plate in just a minute. Adeline, is dinner yummy? Adeline. Yeah, is it good? Yeah. Jacob, do you like your roast and gravy? What about you, babe? Is it good? Whatever. You have an awfully lot on your plate for it not being very good.
Man's gotta eat.
Yeah, but you got an awfully lot for not being pretty good.
Family's happy. Okay, I just wanted to say again that I'm making these videos partially because I'm bored, and I think that my friends on my Facebook would like to see them. My family members might get a kick out of them and make fun of me. And I know that I have some friends, like Miss Olivia, who just needs all the help she can in the kitchen. So maybe she would like to, people like her will get use out of these videos. So if you do have any ideas of something that maybe you want to see me cook, or if I don't give enough detail into something, or I went too fast on something, or you feel like I missed something, just comment on my videos and let me know. And then the next time I make something, I'll try fixing it. I like constructive criticism. And these videos are really just fun to make for me, so I'm hoping it'll be a new hobby that you guys all enjoy.